Sounds good. It's 6:30 now, so we can start. Welcome everyone to this very special CME Mumbai Network webinar for the future of agriculture and the food industry in India. My name is Aashay Doshi, and I'll be the host for moderating the interview. Mansi will be moderating the Q&A, and I'd like to invite Rekha Koita, who is the head of the CME Mumbai Network, to say a few words of welcome to our attendees as well as our panelists. Rekha?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. And, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Rekha Koita, the head of the Mumbai chapter of the CMU Alumni Association. Welcome, a warm welcome to all of you, who have taken the time out to attend this webinar. Today is it's a different topic which we have not covered before, and I'm sure it's going to be really interesting. It's about, it's really regarding the evolution of the entire industry around agriculture and food sustainability, and what's happened so far, how has it evolved, how has it gone from unorganized to organized, and what do we see in store for the future. I'm sure today's panel discussion is going to be absolutely fascinating, because I think the best part is that we have three different guest speakers, Aashish, Kishor and Ameya, who are all handling different parts of the value chain. So whereas Aashish is involved in development of seeds, and he's looking at seeds through his company Mahyco. Kishor, you can see the Ergos logo and the good branding that he's put up. So he deals with the farmers on the ground, helping them with their sustainability, yield, storage, and even looking at aspects like finance. And Ameya basically takes the products and processes them. So he's in the processed food industry. So they're all dealing with different aspects, but are all connected. And I think we're going to explore this further. So with this, I'd like to hand over to Aashay. And of course, I'd just like to mention that this wonderful event has been put together by Aashay and Mansi. So thank you very much. I'm very lucky to have such wonderful, volunteers. Our entire network is lucky that we have a great group of volunteers put this together. And of course, Anshul, who helps with all the communication. So over to you, Aashay.
Thank you, Rekha. Thank you, Mansi, for the kind words. And just to add to what Rekha has said, I'd like to draw the attention to the Bengal famine that happened in 1943, that pushed India towards a green revolution that fed our population post-independence. And fast forward to 2020, we're at an era where self-sustainability and self-reliance and Atmanirbharta is the motto, and the agriculture and food industry is at the center of it. So as Rekha mentioned, Aashish with Mahyco, it's the largest seed producing company in India. Its founder, Dr. Barwale, won the Padma Bhushan award as well as the World Food Prize. But what's interesting about this is that even though they've produced cutting edge seeds, India faces a severe issue in land productivity and agro productivity. We have the second largest arable land in the world, and we are also the largest producer of cereals and pulses, but our land productivity is 38th in the world, which is a huge gap if you see in potential. And the issues range from credit, irrigation, crop management, technology, and overall management. Connected to Mahyco and Aashish is Ergos, as Rekha mentioned, that is solving the problem for warehousing of produce. What happens with farmers is that after they harvest their grains, they don't have enough time to sell them, or they don't have the resources to house them to sell at a good rate. What happens is that there's a 35% wastage of agro produce in India. That is a significant wastage. And Kishor is helping 20,000 farmers in Bihar today connect their warehousing solutions and post-harvest solutions, which is a fantastic, and they've raised 100 crore rupees, congratulations. And the goal is to touch 1 million farmers by 2025. And the final chain is Ameya and Foods and Inns. Foods and Inns is the second largest agro and fruit and vegetable processor in the country, and it has been for the pioneer for the last 50 years. Well, again, what's interesting is that India only processes 2% of its fruit and vegetable production. Compare this with 78% in Philippines and 65% in the US. So these three companies and these three individuals are special because we can truly find an ecosystem that can be built around it. How can we leverage technology, policy, investors, and manpower to connect the dots and take it to the next level? With that, welcome Aashish, Kishor, and Ameya. I'd like to invite you to say a few words of welcome to our community. Introduce yourself, your background, and your company. And we can go in the same chain. Aashish first, Kishor, and then Ameya. Over to you, Aashish.
Thanks, Aashay and the CMU team for having us here and having me here. It's really exciting to be able to talk about agriculture, and especially to a group of young and tech-savvy audience. I'll just introduce myself quickly and then talk a little bit about what we're doing. And of course, look forward to the discussions following our panel. My name is Aashish, like Aashay mentioned, and my connection with CMU is actually through my wife, because she's a CMU graduate. So part of the reason why I'm here is because of her. Of course, besides me being in agriculture, but my education is in economics from Cornell, and I was in their agriculture and life sciences school. Following which I came to India and have been working with my family business. Mahyco is a family business and started by my grandfather. And as Aashay mentioned, it was started during the Green Revolution times, basically to serve the need of multiplying these high-yielding rice and wheat varieties, which eventually led us to be self-sufficient. These varieties were bred by a scientist called Norman Borlaug, who was subsequently awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for his efforts in helping countries like India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh become self-sufficient. Of course, my brother is a managing director of Mahyco, and he leads the efforts on the seed side. Since graduating, I personally have had an interest on the horticulture side and really looking at developing the germplasm base, the varietal base for horticultural crops. So what I mean by that is that we have now a relatively formal effort to produce and research seed varieties for our cereal crops, where we have a lot of production, vegetables, but not so much for some of our horticultural crops like citrus, strawberries, apples, things like that. We're still stuck in the Stone Ages. And part of my interest lies in trying to introduce new varieties into India so we don't have to import them. Again, coming back to the issue of self-sustainability, and not just providing consumers with a better experience, but also giving the farmers a chance to have higher incomes. Look forward to discussing all these in detail, as we go ahead in the discussion.
Awesome, thank you. Kishor, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thanks Aashay for inviting me. I am, connected to CMU through Mansi. The Mansi husband, he was my colleague at ICICI Bank, and that is how I started my journey from a banking industry. And while working with the bank only, I realized that why not there can be a grain bank. The grain bank can be a combination of the typical banking system and the grain what the farmer produce. And if you see, the Indian ecosystem, 130, 140 million, the farmers out of that, the 100 to 110 million, the farmers are small and marginals. Right. And land holdings are very small. Their life cycle, their entire activity, is in a very small scale. So they have a limited access of the institutional finance, the market, right, anything else. So they struggle to actually, get the right support from the ecosystem. So that is how we started this journey from 2012, and then the idea is to create India's the first and largest grain bank, so that we can serve millions of farmers right from the farm gate. And that is the vision, that we should actually customize the solution for the small and marginal farmers who grows and who have a transaction size of 60 to 65 bags of grain. And that grain, that quantum of grain cannot, they take it to the 50 or 60 or 100 kilometer away to the mandi or anywhere else. Their credit requirement is also very small, 70,000, 80,000 rupees. Can any financial institution can offer them that kind of credit requirement for a very short period, like 4 to 5 months, 6 months? Unfortunately, our financial bandwidth has not evolved to that level where these kind of requirement can be fulfilled, right, in a very standardized manner, so that the money lender intervention or the farmer compromising with their dignity and self-respect can be really avoided. and they can make, they can be a maker, a deal maker in the whole supply chain. If you look at the agri space, I think more than half of the work population in the country, they are actually deployed in agricultural space. But unfortunately, the industry is so fragmented only because one region that the farmers are very fragmented. They have a very small land holding. And that is why I believe that these kind of, grain bank idea should be replicated in the country. And then only we'll be able to service 110 million farmers in the country. And I believe that we are all dedicated. We have a strong process, the team, and the strong backing from the investor side, that we are all set to take this, the grain bank model across the country over the next couple of years.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kishor. Ameya, please go ahead.
Hi guys, thanks for having me, and Aashay, befitting introduction, how you put the three of us together, and I think that's exactly the value addition that we probably want to provide and discuss about today. So a little bit about me. My name is Ameya, and I've been at Foods and Inns for about 4.5 years now. So short innings so far, but a long one to go, considering all the difficulties in this space. But a little bit about Foods and Inns. So we are an outright processor of fruit and vegetables. So effectively, whatever gets converted from seeds, as well as what companies like Kishor hold on to, we convert them into finished products and then push them on to customers who then push it on to the retail. So we are mostly in B2B. We also have a couple of our own B2C brands. It's a bit of a difficult space to get in, so we're not really venturing into that too much. From a revenue perspective, we're mostly an export-orientated company. So about 70% of our business is export, 30% is domestic. The 30% is where the excitement is. That's the domestic play, and that is where we're seeing huge opportunity. We're actually seeing a gamut in the market where there's just no one to supply. We're turning out to be one of the people in there who can supply to the consumption story that's playing out in India. Most of our export business is across Europe and Japan. Very well-established markets, our customers to work with, but very empowering, very enriching, a lot of learning from them as well. In terms of plants, we have about 8 plants, 8 manufacturing plants that are situated across the country. So that's a lot of infrastructure, a lot of capex, and hence I'm an outright cash. So really managing that and sweating that asset is extremely important. We work with large companies like the Coca-Colas, Pepsi's, Unilever, Kraft. Having said that, we also work with the smaller guys like Epigamia and Paperboard and learn from them, as well as they learn from us as well when it comes to manufacturing and scaling. A little bit about me. I traditionally do not come from a food background. I come from a finance background, from a deals background. So I was with PricewaterhouseCoopers for about 8 years before I came to Foods and Inns, of which 4 years I was in London and 4 years in Hong Kong. So looking forward to interacting.
Fantastic. And we're glad to have everyone here. Before we get into the structured interview, I just want to quickly go over the format. It's going to be around 40 minutes of the moderated interview with the topics. And then we're going to move into moderated Q&A by Mansi. So for all our attendees, I'll direct your attention to the Q&A box at the bottom. As we go through this, please put in your questions when you have them. And towards the end, we'll try our best to answer them. And Aashish, Ameya, Kishor, we have a variety and a very eclectic bunch of attendees. Everyone from industrialists who want to get into the agro space, to pure agriculturists, to students who are interested to get into this, as well as startups and investors who are looking to deploy capital. So really looking forward to learning from everyone. We can start from the first part of the discussion, which is around organizing an unorganized sector. As Kishor mentioned, that the Indian land holdings, farm land holdings, is average of 2 acres per farmer. The land to man ratio is very, very small. So I wanted to get your perspective. So each of your businesses, as to your journey on organizing a very, very fragmented market on the operational ground level, whether it is starting from scratch like Kishor, or taking up to scale for like Mahyco and Foods and Inns. What are the challenges that you faced, especially during the pandemic? And what have you done to pivot and adjust to the new reality right now? So Aashish, you can go. You can start first.
Yeah, I can share some perspectives both on the seed side as well as on the horticultural side from the what we call the planting material or the input side. In the 1960s, when Mahyco was actually founded, the whole seed sector was pretty unorganized. There was no standard for a quality seed. When we talk about seed, there are 2 or 3 parameters that are extremely important to get the right output. We talk about genetic purity to make sure that when you plant a specific variety of a certain type, you want to ensure that you get that specific variety. And to do that, there is a certain methodology and a process to be followed on the seed production side. So really the process involved with Mahyco, I mean, there was a lot of help provided by foundations. I mean, the Rockefeller Foundation was one which really came in and helped organize the sector. And it was just about learning from others. The processes were pretty established in other countries, but it was about learning how to ensure that genetic purity is maintained. The other quality parameters like germination, which is extremely important. If you plant 100 seeds in the ground, you want to make sure as many of those 100 actually germinate, which is a critical aspect of ensuring productivity. I mean, if you don't have a plant, you're not going to have any produce from it. So these were some of the issues which kind of evolved, as seed production became more organized from just the cottage industry, and parameters were set, and deadlines or quality kind of standards were determined both by the government as well as companies. And over a period of the last kind of 30 to 50 years, we have a very kind of well-established industry, I would say, which is not only kind of, crossed the hump in terms of establishing these parameters, but has also now gone to the next stage of doing research, which I think is kind of the next stage of the evolution of the industry, where we actually introduce varieties produced from our own knowledge, and it's a constant struggle to be able to fight against nature to continue the high yields. We spoke about productivity a little bit earlier, and it all starts from the seed. I mean, if the seed doesn't have the potential to yield, no matter what happens otherwise, you're not going to be able to have a high produce. So the seed industry, I would say, has grown leaps and bounds. But if we look at the horticultural side, and if we look at planting material, I think that we're still quite early in terms of its evolution when we compare ourselves to other countries. And here, I think the nursery industry, which is the industry which develops planting material for horticultural crops. So for the audience, most of the horticultural crops are not grown by seed. They're actually grown by plants that are provided by nurseries. And again, the issues are the same, but in some ways a little bit more complicated, because when you plant, say, a variety of, say, hapus, or mango, you only get to know if it's really hapus once it starts fruiting. So that's, 3 years down the line. And if the farmer doesn't get the right variety, there's a direct impact on his yields, on his productivity. And he has a loss in time, which he has to make up. And there are very specific standards that we can learn from that are adopted in other countries to have a formal industry from the nursery side. Not just in terms of being able to produce quality plants in large numbers, because there is a shortage of planting material, but at the same time, really diversifying the base of what's available to plant. So for example, if I take apples, 95% of what we're planting or what's in the ground right now in India is Red Delicious. And the whole world has moved on from Red Delicious. I mean, everywhere else it's considered to be an inferior apple. And we're importing apples from all over the world that are produced by farmers, of different varieties, whereas there's no reason why we can't produce these different varieties of apples. Of course, it's not as simple as to just be able to do it, but there is a process to be followed, and that's one of the things that we're interested in, is to try and bring in new varieties. It's also important from the processing side and the consumer side, where we want to ensure that consumers get the right experience, get a diverse product, which they have experienced when they're traveling or just want a variety. But at the same time, in terms of processing, it's an extremely important component because one of the reasons why we're still importing concentrate from, it's really interesting to note that we're importing orange juice concentrate from Brazil, importing lemon concentrate from Argentina. And there's no reason why we can't produce it here. But one of the big bottlenecks is because we don't have the right variety, which would give the right juice content, which would give the right yields to make us more competitive, which is what's preventing us from doing this internally. So these are some of the things that we've been working on, and it takes time with agriculture. It's a 3-year cycle to get anything tested. Even though it works somewhere else in the world, we have to test it internally. But the good thing is that there's lots to learn from other countries, other companies around the world. And we have a big market, which allows us and which gives us the confidence that if we get it right, there is a sustainable business to be made out of this.
Right. Thanks, Aashish. I think it's what you highlighted was interesting, that this is not an industrial production unit. Agriculture has a lot of variables. So organizing those fragmented parts takes a lot of time and patience and with the right vision. Moving to Kishor, Kishor, you've started the operations from the ground up. And, your experience directly dealing with farmers and the panchayats is something that we can all learn from as to how you went ahead and organized those unions and how you made progress. Go ahead.
Yeah. So when we talk about organizing the unorganized stakeholder in this space, I would refer 3 elements: the farmer, the local food processor, and the warehouse owners. These all 3 players are available in the country. I'm not doing any magic. What I'm trying to do, I'm bringing all 3 people together.
Right.
There are hundreds and thousands of warehouses available in the country at every panchayat level. Billions of rupees has been spent by the government of India for last decades to develop infrastructure at farm gate. But no one knew that what to do with this infrastructure. The other side, the farmer was struggling with 60 or 70 bags grain, and they were dependent on those local traders and artia, and they were distressfully selling to them at throwaway price during the harvest time because they don't have space to keep it, and they have the next cash flow requirement for the next crop. The third elements, the local food processor units were very small. Every district headquarter level, there are 8 to 10 food processor units. They are consuming 100 metric ton per day, 100 to 120 crore kind of turnover kind of companies. They were actually dependent on the direct supply during the harvest time. And after the harvest time, they were supposed to shut down their plant or, go down to the 20%, 30% capacity, utilization. If you see the population distribution in the country also, 60 to 70% population, lives in the rural areas, and from where they get the food or these kind of, the semi-processed food like wheat flours or all these things. They buy from the local market. They don't buy, the branded atta and all that stuff. So these processors, they were sourcing the material from the harvest, in the harvesting time from the farmer during the season. But after that, they were not capable to get the material again from the upcountry location where these grain were going during the harvesting time to the upcountry location based larger warehousing, facility. So what I did, we just brought all 3 together. We hired these warehouses on a long-term lease. That is how the warehousing space got accumulated. We used technology to connect all the warehouse digitally so that the entire stock become fungible. So for the buyer or for the farmer, doesn't matter. Once the quality is certain and the inwarding done, all the stocks, it's like a shares in a demat account, right? The only thing is that I have to take care that the standard quality to be maintained. And that is only possible if you are engaging with the farmers 365 days. It cannot be solved with the last mile engagement, transferring to third party and they are, getting the grain from the farmer place. Always there will be an issue of quality and standardization. As I question also in a, Q&A box. So what we are trying to focus, there are hundreds of pain points in agri space. Post-harvest management side, it is $265 billion market in India. To streamline this, we have to digitize each bag. We have to connect each bag to the buyer. We have to connect each bag to the financial institutions who can electronically pledge it. And for them, even 60,000 or 50,000 lending to the farmer becomes easier. So technology plays a great role through API integration, through your mobile app, and through directly giving a portal or access to these food processors who can directly buy from the farmer on this platform. And the quality and the quantity assurance can be only established if your footprint is at farm gate level. The farm gate level only you can assure that if the quality is ups and downs, you can advise the farmer, go back and clean it and dry it and pack it and bring it back. If you have an operation at 100 kilometers away, the farmer will not come. Farmer never goes beyond 2-3 kilometers from their establishment. So the entire process, entire system has to be close to the farm gate so that the farmer gets comfort, confidence, and then slowly you win their trust through the transaction and 365 days presence to their, close to their house, close to their farm, and they also come to your place and see the operation and build trust. So I think that is the way where the farmers start using the facility. They avoid, the damage control, and then finally they sell when the market is established. So connecting these three coordinates, I believe that is where we are actually enabling the farmer to at least earn 30 to 40% higher income on this. And within a year, if I'm talking 2 crop, Kharif and Rabi, put all together, if you club this, we are doubling the farmer income in a year rather than the Honorable Prime Minister, the mission is to double the farmer income in a couple of years. We double farmer income almost every year, just because connecting all these, fragmented elements or the stakeholder and bringing them on one platform.
Fantastic. And this is a true example of local level execution. And my comment is, a lot of startups come with the technology that is fascinating, but a lot of them forget about the end consumer. So it's very fascinating that you've engaged the farmers at every level to get their buy-in and iterate, which is really fascinating. And congrats on the doubling of income. That is fascinating achievement. So moving to you, Ameya, on Foods and Insight, would love to know what organization looks, and I know that you're trying to get back into the back-end integration for the company. What does that look in the fragmented space, and what are your challenges and approach going forward?
So I think we all can agree that the agricultural space is definitely very fragmented. We need to make a push in this space. It's very tough to scale it. It's very tough to organize it. Let's get real. That's not really easy. Sitting in an AC office in Bombay or Delhi is really not helping. We need to be there on the ground, hands deep, right? That's the only way we're going to fix this problem. So it's a long way to go on the whole. And I would get into specific problems to Foods and Ins. I am getting a sense of optimism, right? Over the last couple of years, governments are partaking, financial institutions are partaking. It's all about building sustainable value chains, building barriers to entry, trying to stay net free cash flow positive, creating good quality products for our consumers. Now we've got to understand that India is not what is represented in Bombay, Delhi, or Kolkata or Bangalore, right?
Correct.
We are 70% agricultural. Our ideal price point is 10 rupees. How do we actually connect with people who can fit in that 10 rupee price?
Right.
Now, from our challenges per se as a business, I would say our biggest challenge, and what I honestly think value is in my industry, is in backward integration.
Right.
We have great forward integration links. We have a great customer list. No doubt, there's a lot of effort gone in the past. My father scaled this company up, and he's built really good initiatives with the front end customers. But we have a lot more work to do on the back end. So on the back end, I think my main challenge is to get more farmers on board. Similar to what Kishor said, we need to empower the farmers. We need to enrich them. We need to show them that there is a lot more that we can do. Now, the traditional farmers are pretty conservative. I would say the new age farmers who have access to probably 6 SIM cards and 3 mobile phones are probably Googling every single product. They're more focused on how can I do something that's more value added, maybe like an avocado or a ladyfinger or a squash or a pumpkin, rather than doing a commodity guava or a mango, right? So the new generation farmers are definitely thinking different because they have access to technology. The technology is big. Now, just on the facts, and as you said correctly as before as well, India is the second largest producer of fruit and vegetables. We do about 260 million tons of fruit and vegetables every year, right? But only 2% of that is processed. Correctly said initially as well. That is dismal. That is shocking. Right? And this is exactly what not just us, but everyone in the value chain needs to contribute.
Right.
Right. So you look at China, as you said as well, and even the US. I think China is about 20-odd%. The US is 50 or 60-odd% in terms of value addition or rather processing to fruit and vegetables. So the opportunity is huge, and this is exactly what I tell our investors and shareholders as well. The opportunity is massive. Now, if you look at a couple of fruit and vegetables, if you look at, say, India's number one. I would not believe. I don't know if you would believe this, but when I first heard it, I was a bit shocked. India's number one for grapes, papaya, banana, mango, of course. But when you look at exports of these fruits, we're probably ranked 5 or ranked 6, right? So that is the exact problem that we're trying to fix. Now, there are various issues, right? It's going to be duty structures are not favorable. Farmers are not provided with bank finance. Processors are not provided with, with high interest costs, etc. The huge issues, which I guess we'll discuss as well going forward. But that is the real, that's the real opportunity and the real problem. And you look at, we service the front end brands. We service HUL, we service all the other big brands. What would they be without people in the value chain? People who provide the seeds, people who help store the products, people who process the products, right? Our brand recognition is really not there, right? So HUL probably trades at multiples, food processing companies are probably at sub-revenue multiples, etc. But we are the ones actually supporting them. Now, for me to really build my valuation, not financially, but just as a company, is farmer acquisition, right? So valuation of big front-end companies, and I'm sure a lot of the guys attending today might be from an investment background. A lot of their valuations might be based on distribution channels, brand presence, customer acquisition. For me, my KPI is farmer acquisition, right? Today, if I might have 1 lakh farmers under my belt, how do I go to 4 lakh farmers? Because that helps me capture more land, train them better, effectively give them better farming practices, whether it's with natural pesticides instead of chemical pesticides, whether it's with the seeds, whether it's with the, any other equipment that I can provide them to help improve their yields, reduce their costs, increase their income. Right? That's what we're looking for. Farmer empowerment, farmer income sustainability for the farmer. The minute they are sustainable, we are sustainable, we can get better products to the market. So I obviously want access to a lot more fruit and vegetables, which I currently don't get. My biggest problem is my plant has idle time, and that's an issue. I need my plant to be running 365 days a year. I need to be sweating that asset, whether I'm selling a product, even at no gain, no loss. I need to cover my costs, right? So the opportunity is really big. We need to be patient to it till we get there. I think the way to really fix this in terms of helping it scale is obviously trying to disintegrate the APMC or the mandis, which has been widely discussed. In fact, last week, there was a big announcement to break them down now finally. In terms of the APMC and the mandis, you really got to look at it from a processor perspective. What value do we add? Value for me today is quality, consistent quality. It's traceability. I want to know which farm it's come from. It's pesticide. Pesticide is an issue which I don't think we are screaming about enough at all. I'm teaching guys what food we are putting in our mouth when it comes to a Bombay APMC market, and it's put in a tub of chemicals just so that it gets 3 more days of shelf and looks greener before it goes into our mouths, right? So we've got to control that process. And trust me, there are lots of proactive farmers in the contract farming space, which is another real strategy to get over this, who are doing pesticide residue free. Unfortunately, all the good stuff we're exporting, right? Because they're willing to pay us.
Right.
But all the stuff that is full of pesticides is probably staying back at the country and going to our local markets. So pesticides, another issue that I really want to tackle. Breaking the APMCs, or probably having more of a leeway or even bypassing them, doing more contract farming with our farmers. And like we were discussing before, even with Aashish, getting us access to sweet potatoes, the butternut squash. Those are exotic fruits for us in India.
Right.
They're not exotic in Canada. They're not exotic in the US, right? If we can do that at a lot cheaper cost here, spiralize them, freeze it. What is value addition in food processing is cutting, slicing, drying, processing, right? That is value addition. I can save your time as a consumer. I am adding value to that product, right? So, and overall, I think the ground level reality is, and as much time I've spent in my plants, learning the business and with farmers, it's income stability for the farmers.
Right.
The farmers are humble guys. They have no exaggerated aspirations. They just want to settle down, be happy, be safe. they're not looking to really, they have no huge aspirations in life really to make a lot of money off it or something. They just want to make good produce. And we want to get in touch with those type of direct farmers. We want to help them procure more land, help them scale up a lot. So that effectively gives an idea of, our view of the industry, what we see as a challenge in terms of backward integration and how we can really.
Got it. Thanks so much, Ameya. I think what you highlighted was not only food security, but food quality and the involvement of the ecosystem that needs to be focused on. Before we move into the tactical angles of technology, investment, government policy, again, I want to direct our attendees' attention to the Q&A box. Feel free to keep putting your questions. We'll be approaching the Q&A section in around 10 to 15 minutes. Before we move into this section. Now, going into the more tactical angles, we spoke about on a high level technology. Ameya mentioned the APMC Act, the Essential Commodity Act. We want to break it down tactically for our audience, what it's going to take on all levels to take agro to the next level and connect the ecosystem. Let's first focus on technology and investments. There's been a rapid rise of agri-tech companies in India in the last year. There was $300 million of investments for agro startups, concepts like AI, computer vision on farms that are all coming in from Israel and the US, slowly starting to enter India. In your role, in your view, for your company as well as agriculture, would love to know what can a new startup or technologies expect while entering the Indian market or trying to get user acceptance? For investors, we're looking at a lot of VCs interested in the agro space. What are their timelines looking like in terms of return of money? Because as they say, entry ki problem hai, exit ke baare mein mat socho. Like you have to wait it out for some time before you make any traction. So we want your views on the technology angle as well as the financing angle in this space as it relates to your company and the broader spectrum. So Aashish, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that this is, it's a really important question. But before jumping into it, I just wanted to share a little bit about the psyche of the farmer. I think that sometimes sitting in big cities, we think that the farmer sometimes, is helpless. He's dependent. He's kind of reliant on government policies. He's, under this kind of shadow, so to say. Yes, he is restricted a lot, but I do want to share that the farmer is an extremely rational person. We can't club all the farmers into one bucket. He's an extremely shrewd businessman. He follows the market. Unfortunately, the challenge with agriculture has been that it's not been liberalized. There's no freedom of economic activity. We liberalized as a country in the 1990s, but we never liberalized agriculture, which is evidenced by some of these recent restrictions that we are trying to remove. And if they're done in the true spirit of what has been declared, I think it would go a long way in helping farmers. If you look at apple farmers, for example, they're all third generation, our age, extremely well-traveled, extremely wealthy, all have iPhones, want to make a lot of money, are making a lot of money, and have the desire. I mean, they're going around the world trying to get access to new varieties. So I just wanted to share that that farmers are not helpless. They're just not allowed to function with the freedom that we function in other businesses. Coming to the point of technology, I'll just highlight that before jumping into AI and some of the more related aspects of technology for this group, there are a lot of technologies out there which are not being used in India for many, many different reasons. I mean, we're 2 generations behind adopting some technologies which are very well adopted in other countries. GM is one of them, and unfortunately, there's a big fear around this, which is really, it's a little uncertain. It's a little like unfortunate, I would say, because the NGOs have kind of taken the headlines and created a fear psychosis around it. But we've all lived and worked or studied in the US, and it would be hard to not have a meal without GM produce. In fact, we have been importing GM produce for a long time. What is a little interesting to note is that we're importing products that are produced by this technology, but we're not allowing our farmers to use this technology. So we really have to think hard in terms of why is it that this is so? So we don't really have to, what I'm trying to get at is that we don't really have to invent anything new.
Right.
We can adopt technology that is already being used in different parts of the world and has been proven to be effective as well as safe. That said, in terms of new technologies, I think I think that you may have heard about how software is going to eat the world and it's going to come after agriculture as well. I think definitely the use of AI is starting to show in different aspects in agriculture. Many of you may have heard of a company called Blue River Technology, which is using vision and algorithms to determine which exactly is the right area of a field to spray, and it need not have to be a spray to get rid of the weed. It can be something like a mechanical probe that goes and gets rid of the weed, or even be like something like a laser, which can be more environmentally friendly, really reducing the amount of pesticide we use and targeting the use to where it's required, so eliminating the excess. These are still, I would say, in the early stages and have not been commercialized to the extent that is required for mass adoption, but it just goes to show what is possible with agriculture. Another aspect is how drones are being used in China. They are extensively being used to spray, and the way that they are being used allows the more effective use of pesticides. Much lesser pesticide is used and it's more targeted. So the drone can actually determine the quantity of pesticide to be sprayed by the effectiveness or by the intensity of the disease on that specific plant, and will spray only on the plant, not necessarily on things that are not required to be sprayed on, thereby reducing the sprayed quantities. It's also making farming for farmers safer, not allowing them to be exposed to some of these chemicals which could be potentially harmful, and cheaper, of course, making them more profitable. So I think one thing which is really important in terms of these technologies is that they have to be cost effective and have to be able to offer an advantage which the traditional solution did not, without which it's not going to be able to scale and provide a commercial product, so to say. So we do have the concepts of AI and vision technology and all these other technologies that you probably know better about, but unless they provide a tangible economic value on the farm, the adoption will always be limited. That said, there are now another example of use of AI is the use to collect data in breeding farms. What I mean by that is that as a breeding and a research company, I do a number of trials to determine which is the best variety to take to the next stage in terms of yield, quality, disease resistance, so many parameters. And traditionally, I have to send out people with notepads or even with an app to collect data from maybe 10,000 such candidates. And now we have the testing of these robots, which can actually go into the field and convert this data collection from, which is being done manually by people, to an automated form of data collection through LiDAR and some of these other fancy sensors, which allows quick collection of data, probably more accurate collection of data, and allowing me as a seed company to maybe do 20,000 trials as opposed to 10,000 trials, allowing me to maybe get my product out in 1.5 years or half the time, right? Than I would have been able to do otherwise. So it's really exciting to be able to determine how these technologies can be used. My personal dream is to have like a virtual assistant for a farmer. So, at any time that he, say for a cotton crop, if he doesn't know about something on his field, he can just ask a Siri type of assistant that this is what I'm seeing, can you help me, and the challenge there is that traditionally it's been, farmers have relied on extension agents physically coming to their field to ascertain the problem and then provide a solution. And its fields are very dispersed. We know that. Not only that, the solution has to be provided within a certain window. If you're 2 days too late with the right solution, even doesn't matter. You know, the problem has caused the issues on the field, and it's irreversible. So kind of an on-demand kind of assistant or a smart assistant, you know, would really, and maybe it's the technology exists. It's just about collecting the data, and anyone willing to help on that, you know, it would be great to work together on that.
So for the startups that are there, that's a good cue as well. And I want to, on the point of technology, want to bring Kishor and Ameya in. Not only, I mean, Kishor, you've also worked on the investor side, raising money for funds. So want to give your perspective on technology and then move to Ameya as well for the investor side.
Great. Yeah. So when we talk about technology and agriculture, we have a bit different experience. Since working at a ground zero, we have seen, or we have traveled across the country, Maharashtra, UP, Karnataka, all the states we have traveled, right from Bihar and all that. We have seen that technology adoption by the farmer is hardly 4 to 6%, right? So whatever AI or, AML, AI or ML we are thinking of implementing it, it will take its time to reach to that gestation level, right? Till then, I think whatever data is available on the public domain, it is all the secondary data or tertiary data. Like we calculate how much agri input consumption is happening in which states, and basis that we do lots of algorithm and all that. Farmer adoption is very slow. We have to go offline to online. That is the way I believe that we are doing it. 365 days engaging with the farmers and collecting their real data in a personal engagement when they need credit, when they need inputs, when they actually, get the cash earlier, or even today, maybe the 60-70% farmers selling their grain and getting cash.
Right.
Getting cash, they don't have the banking habits, but there is no financial footprints. So forget about the digital footprint. They have a very basic things like from where they buy the seeds, when they need cash, they borrow money from the money lender. So there is no footprint about that. So there is no trail, there is no evidence of any kind of data at a primary level. So that is the one level. Secondly, if you see in India, the land ownership is very, 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 very vague. Now the couple of states have started digitizing it, but it will again take time. So now what we are doing, we are taking a satellite image of the crop and analyzing and forecasting the output, and then accordingly we are calculating input and all that. We believe that rather than artificial intelligence, we have lots of things to do with the real intelligence. When we say real intelligence, when farmers sell 100 bags of grain, what he does with that cash, where he goes. So that way, when we analyze and capture all the data in our system throughout the year, every month when we meet the farmer, we have an app, mobile app and web app, we update data, okay, from where you bought the seeds, at what rate, which quality, right. And that data actually helps me to plan, to enable him to get the, take the better decisions. So that is on the technology side. The technology will be useful definitely if you have the historical data in the system, and that too at a primary level. Basically on other point, which I was going through the policy level, if you see, the government is very bullish on encouraging the last mile engagement based model. We have been working with the central government also for last 1.5 years, and trust me, they are so passionate about this model that yes, there has to be a right infrastructure, there has to be a right ecosystem. They have come up with a scheme similar to our model that they will be helping the startups like grain banks so that they can start the business and make their warehousing business viable. So government policy is also trying to align with the requirement of the agri-tech space. For example, I tell you, like there is a WDR, Warehouse Development Regulatory Authority. So there, what we do, we register the warehouse and we can issue ENWR, Electronic Negotiable Warehouse Receipt. And that electronic receipt can be electronically pledged to the banks, or it can be transferred or sold to any buyer across the country now after this APMC policy modification. The WDRA has also considered lots of changes in their policy to register small warehouses. Since they had exposure of the larger warehouse coming on the platform, now since the Ergos Grain Bank has demonstrated this model that yes, this is viable and it can really create generate commercial return to the investor. So government has come up with a scheme, and WDRA has also adopted a couple of change in their policy to register the warehouse. So this is what we are feeling, that government policies are also favorable. Technology, we have to go slow, but yes, technology can be used internally in a very aggressive manner. Otherwise, the grain bank model cannot be scaled rapidly. So definitely technology plays a great role, but farmer interface side, it will slowly scale. As you can see in my, backside, you can see the image, the farmer is using kiosk. So we have to put kiosk at the warehouse. You have to bring them, you have to give them demo. So hand-holding, the last mile hand-holding is very much necessary. And the fear, the farmer has a fear about what will happen, whether this data will be, stolen by someone, whether someone take money out from my bank account. So these kind of fears can only go if you have a continuous engagement with them and they feel comfort with your relationship. So basically the farmer piece can be solved more on the relationship oriented base rather than to the technology side. So technology can really slowly replace the human interface or the, personal engagement basis kind of things. And then I believe the technology definitely will help a lot in future when you scale and when you ask the farmer, even today, let's say the farmer who used my platform 4 years back, my executive was meeting him 4 years back 10 times in a year. Now they have started using mobile app. So today my executive meeting only 2 times. So the 10 times to 2 times. So the meeting, the number of meeting is going down because now they can access everything on the mobile phone. They have started correlating the physical things and the electronic things. So that is, slowly we have to move on and we have to migrate them from the physical form to the electronic form. That is how I believe the technology will play a great role. And with all this, we are creating a billions of digital footprint of the farmer. That data is going to help actually the bank or financial institution that how much credit is required for which farmer, then the insurance company that which crop is being grown by the which farmer and what kind of the crop insurance can be given. So all things are possible only we have a real data about the farmer in my system. How the technology will play a role in future.
Got it. Thank you, Kishor. And Ameya, moving to you, you mentioned the APMC, you mentioned policy, and you're a finance guy. So what are your views on, before we move into the Q&A, want your views on what you see if you were the agri minister for a day or policy minister, what would you want to see? And on the investment side, what do you want to warn investors of or, invite them to join in the agriculture phase in terms of what their expectations are?
Yeah. No, so I think your question cracked me up. If I was the agri minister, I could go on. I think the session is just not enough. Just to get me started, if I could change things, it would just be quite a few things across the board, namely probably land reform. It doesn't really affect me, but it does affect the farmers. There is no clarity on who owns what land. There is zero clarity on leasehold, freehold structures. These farmers are struggling. They're probably doing a hell load of harvests, but they don't actually know whether they can occupy that land. It's the duty structure, right? We're supporting the rupee today as food processors, but if we don't have favorable duties, sending product into Europe at about 3 or 4% duty, Mexico sending product into Europe at 0% duty. I would never be competitive. Right. So they're always going to go for the Mexican product, especially for filler juices and the basic mixed fruit juices, etc. Cost of funding, where farmers are not getting that much access to finance. Yes, there are a lot of startups in the space that are helping farmers. Lack of awareness on pesticides. Right. Today, I'm probably one of the only suppliers who can move product to the US because we're fully pesticide compliant on carbendazim. Right? Carbendazim is a carcinogen. We consume it on a daily basis, just by the way. Right? But when our product goes to the UK or Europe or US, they strictly ban those products because they are tested before it's there. So, these are just probably 3 or 4 things that I would really bring about in terms of change. There's a long way to go, even from an agri minister side. Yes, we have been lobbying with the agricultural minister for a long time and working very closely with them. But on the tech side, I think it continues to be a very interesting space. The way I look at it is, I think, let's be honest, today, India is more digitally literate than it is alphabetically literate, right? So if we take a kid and give him a phone, he's probably going to make, get it down from the screen to every single component in it. But in the rural space as well, I think people are using a lot more technology. They probably can't put 2 and 2 together or put a word together, but they know how to use a mobile phone. That is the very basic premise of technology in this country. It is going to explode. I think when I was looking up a couple of numbers, it was 600 million that's been invested in ag tech so far. I mean, that is nothing. We're at the tip of the iceberg. What was Flipkart's valuation was 17 billion.
Right.
So where are we with 600 million in the last 3 years? I mean, nowhere. We're not even, I mean, people should be trying to promote this space a lot more, put a lot more capital in it. We need private capital. Let's be honest. Governments are not doing the job. We need private capital to come in. We need expertise to come in. And when it comes to technology, yes, we have been using it a lot within the foods and in space. We work with big data, AI, trying to really match weather patterns, trying to get better information on crop yields, similar to what Kishor and Aashish were talking about. We also did a lot of trials on robotics as well on our processing line. It does it takes images of the products and really tells you what the tissue is inside the fruit or vegetable. If that's bad, a robotic arm just wipes it off the line, right? So it doesn't get processed. So there's really cool innovation in this space. But I think the real question is, does it provide value to the customer or does it provide value to the farmer, right? Who's actually paying for that value? I don't think there's much value to the farmer per se. I mean, I think one of the really cool tech platforms that I like is Fasal. They have these small devices that are spread across land, and it helps them track weather patterns. It helps them track pesticides that are put in there, etc. So I think those are the guys that are really making differences to farmers. Now I can use big data analysis and send it to my Japanese customers. They love it. They'll pay me $150 more per time. Just because I can provide them data, I can provide them a picture of the farmer, where I got the product from. It's fully traceable all the way from. So it really, technology really depends. You've got to be very, very sure who you are targeting, where the value play really is.
Yep.
I'm sometimes confused as to where the value is, whether it's for the farmer or the customer. I think, again, with technology, we need to get into it one way or the other. We need to create data banks. We need to create data centers, as you put that very correctly. My target is to help farmers, right? Help farmers is help them double yields, help them double their income, help them reduce their costs. Technology is very scalable. You can definitely do that. And from a finance space as well, we are a public listed company, so we do work a lot with our investors and shareholders as well, try to get them best returns that we can. I still think there's a long way to go on the PE VC space. I think financial institutions are really missing social impact of agriculture.
Right.
Social impact type of company should be looking at this very aggressively. I think we're working with farmers, we're working for their well-being, we're adding value to product, we're trying to reduce waste, we're trying to reduce pesticide that really fits in well to environmental and social and the governance element of ESG.
Right.
I also think banks, we work with a couple of private banks, public sector banks, but their view of the world is so opaque. It's really not coming across when they look at my balance sheet.
Right.
I'm a cash flow based business, right? I just want to make sure every day that I have more money coming in than going out. I kind of give that as a golden rule to all the startups in the space. Don't worry about profit. Don't worry about revenue. Just worry about cash flow, especially in the food space, right? You've got to stay away from things like CapEx, get them pushed out to food processors, not to promote myself, but it's just easier on the bank instead of building a huge factory. You've got to be very frugal with your thinking. I think banks need to help us a lot more. We were really at the tip of the iceberg when it comes to finance and when it comes to technology. I think we still have a long way to go, but definitely a lot more traction over the last couple of years than what it was before.
Absolutely. So I think so for our attendees, the three of them have graciously agreed to stay on for 10 to 15 minutes more. So we can now move into the Q&A section. So Mansi, I'm going to make you host and I'll let you take the Q&A session.
Thanks, Aashay. For all those people who are attending, the chat box has been open for you to type your questions. I've got about 13 questions for now. The way we're going to do this is that I'm going to unmute you and you can ask the question yourself. So the first person that has sent us a question is Daksha Ved. So Daksha, are you here? Can you please unmute yourself and ask your question? Also, just take a minute to introduce yourself, quickly tell us who you are, and then you can ask your question. And if you want to specifically direct your question to one of the panelists, please do that.
Yeah, hi. My name is Daksha. I work at IBM, and my question was around blockchain and other data-driven technologies, and I think some of you did touch on that. So how's that affecting the farming business, and what are some of the trends that you're seeing in India specifically, and where would you like to see more change come through?
So does any one panelist want to take that on, or?
Aashish, do you want to take that question, please?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the inputs, I think we have to explore how it can be used. But I think one use of blockchain, from what I understand, and I don't understand it as well as probably you do, but in terms of determining the source and determining the traceability of that product once it leaves the farm, is there a way for us to without any interference know where it's coming from, what's kind of its content, what's been applied on it? Traceability is a big aspect when we export produce, but can we make it an integral part of supply using some of these new technologies without it being too expensive for domestic produce also? So I think that could be one use of the technology from the marketing side.
I think adding to that, what we are learning, a couple of companies have approached us also to record the chemical properties of the grain at the warehouse level, like aflatoxin, gluten, and protein and all that. So there are companies who are providing me the grain sensor. So the grain sensor is helping me to do the sampling of certain quality of, let's say, the gluten level, this percentage. So I can segregate that gluten level grain in the hundreds of warehouses, and the buyer or the processor can purchase that much gluten level grain from my warehouse and can supply it to the specific segment of the market who are gluten sensitive buyers. So I can see a huge scope where this, again, going back to the farmer and saying, if you can follow this process, I think your aflatoxin can be controlled. Like a couple of poultry feed or animal feed companies, they have approached us saying, can you maintain this aflatoxin less than 60%? I will give you the protocol. You have to educate the farmer and get that commodity inwarded, and I will lift it. So I believe the entire traceability will help the entire value chain of the food processing units, or the right from the cultivation to the the consumption. It can be ensured through this way.
Right. Ameya, do you have something to add? Yeah.
Yeah, probably two small bits to add. So I think the premise of blockchain is deregulation. I am not a big fan of deregulating food just because it's got so many people in the value chain, all the way from seed to store. I think if there's any use of blockchain, it's probably to replace the MCX, which is a big commodity exchange, and probably have some ICOs and coins issued against grains, fruit and vegetables that can be exchanged with counterparties, which are mined and then kept in a blockchain. But I think that's as far as we can go with blockchain in agriculture. Probably I'm just a bit too penal.
Right. Thanks for that. So the next question comes from Mr. George Kurian. George, are you there? Can you please unmute yourself and ask the question?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. My name is George Kurian. I head sales for exotic fruits. As rightly mentioned by Ameya, minimum residue limits in pesticide residues, heavy metals, etc., are getting ever more stringent now. And now this calls for heavy and frequent external testing, which today is an extremely expensive proposition, and it's also very time consuming because the accredited labs are all internationally located, and we still have to depend on the likes of Eurofins. So how do we change this by bringing in more credibility internationally to Indian labs? Now, because this would also reduce the testing costs, which could be a pricing element, which can be, thereafter passed down to the Indian farmer. So this whole testing cost today, which is, largely because, like Ameya rightly said, we have to export to countries like the US, where pesticide residue limits are extremely stringent, and hence we have to depend on expensive labs like Eurofins. How do we change this whole testing scenario and bring that element of cost right back into the Indian value chain?
So thanks, George, for your question. I think you definitely agree with me that pesticide is an issue that we do need to tackle hands-on very quickly. Other countries,
exactly.
I completely agree. It's extremely expensive in our space to constantly test them in labs. But I think this is exactly where technology comes in. Exactly where we can use technology. And as I was saying, probably things like Fasal, which are these small devices that are put across the farmland that actually monitor pesticides. They monitor the crop yields. They are connected by Bluetooth to your phone. It tells you if something is not if it doesn't have enough water, if it has too much of pesticide. So it really helps you, part your land allocate your land in the correct way in terms of what's going in and what is going out. But it is expensive. We need to leverage technology to help reduce the cost. That's the whole play. On technology, it might take time. It's definitely easier said than done. I'm sure you know that. But I think that is one of the way outs. But I think more so than technology is the awareness. I think we need to bring in the awareness of what we're putting in our mouths. I keep bringing this up. It's probably the second time I have. I think you need to be asking yourself twice, where your food is coming from, how many hands it's moved. Farm to fork in India is 7 hands, right? The more hands it passes, the more deterioration to the fruit and vegetable. Farm to fork in the US is 3. Right? So it's not just about the technology, it's about the awareness that needs to be done with companies like us, people like us, as well as a partnership with the government to really reduce the dependence on chemical pesticides, move to more natural pesticides, although it does affect the yield, but move to more natural neem-based pesticides.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Kishor or Aashish, would you like to add something to that? Okay, so we can move on to the next question. Saurabh, you're online now. Can you please ask your question and quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey, good evening, everyone. This is Saurabh Awasthi. Great discussion. Can you guys hear me? So I'm a CMU alum. I'm actually new to this area. I'm a volunteer with an NGO and I'm learning a lot. I have a 2-part question. So I think a lot of you talked about fragmentation, right? And I think production will stay fragmented. But if you think about convergence or integration, which parts or components of the value chain do you think will benefit from convergence and integration? What does that roadmap look like? And the second part of the question is, there are a lot of NGOs, so it's a pretty, cooperated public-private kind of ecosystem. How can public-private partnerships be established to bring complementary capabilities to support that integration?
Saurabh, you want to direct that question to a specific panelist?
I think Kishor talked about fragmentation quite a lot, so why don't we start with him? And probably he's the most energetic of the three.
Great, thanks. Yeah, I was about to revert to your question. See, this fragmentation can be addressed only through connecting the dots at farm gate level. Anything if you think about and talk about, if you are not at farm gate, I'm sorry to say, your effectiveness of integration will not work at all. So anything is possible or everything can be done at farm gate level only. So without that can, we cannot integrate it. Now, if you're talking about integration of public and private partnership, I believe the government had come up with this scheme. I think it's a fantastic scheme which can be used by the young entrepreneurs in the country. That can be, to develop the infrastructure. They can get, that funds which is available. I think more than 1,000 crore funds are available to build capacity. That fund can be used to develop the capacity to operate that warehouse. Also, you get a viability gap funding from the government for initial days when there is a lower occupancy in the warehouse by the farmers. That viability gap funding can be utilized to manage your initial burnings. So there, the public and private partnership can happen. Either the government can give you the capital subsidy or interest subsidy that is available. And secondly, you can run your warehouse professionally, use technology, use market linkages, and use bank credit which is available. The only thing is that initially there may be some struggle, but definitely if the model is around farm gate, that definitely will succeed, and that integration can happen if you have a right intent to bring a farmer on board. As Ameya mentioned, that my vision is to help, let's say, 500,000 farmer. That should be the focus, and if that focus is there, you get infrastructure, you get capital, you get government policy support, everything is aligned, and that's how I believe that integration is very much possible. And I believe that is what your question, and any further question on this?
Yeah, I can just follow up and add how we're working with fragmentation in our businesses. As a seed company, we can't produce seed in a factory, so we actually have to contract the seed out to many growers. And these growers are usually, sometimes even a quarter of an acre in size and producing seed for us. On average, we have about 100,000 or 1 lakh growers that we work with every year who provide us the seed that we eventually have to ensure that it's produced with the right quality standards, the right genetic purity. And it works. We have a team which visits them once in 2 weeks and has some technology to enable us to collect data. One thing to mention is that you can't do it remotely. There has to be an on-field presence. So we do have a 300-person field force that is interacting with these 1 lakh farmers, aided with technology, of course. But it can be done, and it's not just us. All seed companies follow that model, working with small farmers. And in fact, it's a good model for farmers. It helps them earn higher incomes than if they were to produce the regular commodity. So it's a win-win for all. The other example I can share is in terms of exporting grapes. It's very interesting how typically, any other exporter from, say, Chile or South Africa, one exporter is one farmer, who is exporting, say, 30 or 40 containers of grapes. In India, we have one farmer or one container with at least 4 or 5 farmers, providing produce. But it works. I mean, it's not easy, but there is a standard protocol expected in terms of residue levels, in terms of quality of the produce. And one thing that kind of drives it is that there is a buyer willing to pay for it, which kind of puts all the parts of the supply chain, it makes it work. I mean, for example, the farmer is not necessarily directly exporting because he's too small to be able to fill the demand of, say, a 20 container order. So there is a consolidator that comes in and consolidates, say, 40 or 50 farmers, puts them together, ensures that they produce the right quality, helps them produce the right quality, ensures the residue levels, and then is able to deliver the substantial order that is required by the importer in a different country. So the business models have evolved to work with this fragmentation, and I do agree with you. It's going to stay for some time, especially if the land laws, I beg your pardon, don't change, where there are very tedious kind of regulations around who can own land, who can sell land, how much land you can own, which is preventing kind of consolidation. But until then, there have been models that have worked for us.
Great, thank you. So one quick last question by Mr. Ravi Desai, and I think that we are already at the end of our time limit, but one last quick question by Mr. Ravi Desai. Please go ahead. Can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. Please ask your question.
Okay, so my question is that we are completely dependent on imports for edible oils and oilseeds. Will seed technology or better supply chain infrastructure help with this issue? This was the first year that our imports decreased because of the lockdown. And related with oilseeds is what's the prospect for biofuel in India? Like Jatropha has been like the super biofuel for the last 10 years, but it's not really happening. How about algae oil and other biofuels? Is there any prospect in India?
I'll just quickly take the question on the edible oil. It's a really important one. I don't remember the figure off the top of my head, but we're importing billions of dollars, that's B, of edible oil into the country. My personal view, and maybe I come from a biased perspective, is that we're not using technologies that are already available, which can dramatically reduce that import bill. It can increase incomes for farmers. GM mustard, which has been produced by a professor in Delhi University, Deepak Pental, has been shown to increase yields by about 30%. It can make a dramatic increase in availability of edible oil domestically produced by our farmers and help them earn high incomes. So in short, I think, yes, there are technologies available, and I hope that we are able to provide them to our farmers soon.
Great. So thank you so much. I think we'll end the questions there. And Aashay, if you can just summarize and close this discussion.
Sure. Well, thank you, Ameya, Aashish, and Kishor for a fascinating discussion. I think one thing we discussed at the top was how do we get the youth of the country more excited, even though agro employs 50%. We need more energy into it. I think this discussion in particular and your energy and your excitement for it, at least excites me to keep on pushing. And I'm sure I'll keep on encouraging investors as well as the business folk to be involved and support our Atmanirbhar goal. One thing what Aashish mentioned to all our panelists and attendees is if you all want to connect, especially with any of our panelists, just send us an email and we will put you in touch. As we said, we need to build an ecosystem together, and our panel today really exemplifies what an ecosystem should look like, and we hope to learn more and be in touch. And I'll invite Rekha Koita to say the final thank you words and for final address. Rekha, you're on mute, I think.
Sorry. Thank you, Aashay. And I think Aashay is one of the few, young people I know who is actually in this industry. So good for you, Aashay. I'm sure this had a lot of personal takeaways for you. And big thank you, of course, to our three panelists, Kishor, Ameya, and Aashish, for your your wonderful insights, which for me were in a new area, which I didn't know much about. But it's honestly, this has kind of fired something up in me where I think I want to go back and do some more research on agriculture now and sustainability. So a fascinating session, and I think that even the Q&A was really, really wonderful. I mean, a lot of different perspectives and a different aspects which we didn't cover during the discussion. So I think it's really wonderful. 1 hour is really not enough, I think, to do any justice to this topic. But thank you very much again, Kishor, Ameya, Aashish, and a very big thank you to Aashay and Mansi for hosting the session. And yes, hope all of you have a great weekend ahead.
Thank you, everyone.
One last thing, just one last thing, Aashay, I forgot, is that, as all of you would be knowing, right, our Mumbai chapter is trying to put together a series of different events, different webinars on different topics. So we have 2 more events in the pipeline. We'll be sharing the dates soon, but one will be on electric vehicles, and the other one is going to be by Aashish Chauhan, who's the head of the Bombay Stock Exchange. So again, 2 different topics, but I think both are very exciting. And hope to see all of you online during those sessions too. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.